Today we are going to start atomic physics. There we will be discussing various atomic models. Different atomic models were given to explain the structure of atom, as atom cannot be seen. That's why different atomic models were given at different point of time to explain the experimental phenomena available at that time. The first atomic model was given by Dalton. In Dalton's atomic model, Dalton has not done anything new. He just assembled the ideas available at that time. The main points of Dalton's atomic model is that Dalton said that atom is the smallest indivisible part of matter. So it is the smallest basic unit of matter. Every matter is made up of atom and atom cannot be divided. He also said atom is electrically neutral. That is, atom has no charge, it is electrically neutral. He said that different element is made up of different atoms. For a particular element, all the physical and chemical properties of the material remain same. That is, atoms are identical for a particular element. Different element has different atoms. He also said that the smallest atom is hydrogen, and the heaviest atom is around 250 times heavier than hydrogen. So every element has its own atom, but he could not explain the isotopes. Why same element, atoms of same element has different properties? He could not explain that particular phenomena. And after the discovery of electron by Thomson, that model failed, because electron is even smaller than atom and it comes out from atom. So atom is now divisible. So Dalton's model failed as it could not explain the existence of electron in atom. It also could not explain the presence of ions, as due to excess or deficiency of electrons we can have negative or positive ions respectively. So Dalton's model could not explain all this. Then came Thomson's atomic model. How Thomson incorporated the concept of electron? He assumed atom to be a uniformly distributed positively charged sphere with electrons embedded in it like seeds in watermelon. So Thomson assumed that electrons are present inside the atom like seeds in watermelon, and the entire atom is positively charged, uniformly distributed, positively charged. The total positive charge of atom and total negative charge of electron are equal, which makes it electrically neutral. If electron is removed from the atom, then it becomes positive ion. If excess electron comes to the atom, it becomes negative ion. So Thomson could explain the presence of ions, the presence of electrons in atom. So one particular problem is solved, but still the different isotopes, properties of different isotopes could not be explained. Now Thomson's student Rutherford did an experiment on atoms, that is known as Rutherford's alpha particle scattering experiment. What Rutherford did? He took a thin gold foil on which he bombarded alpha particles and observed. What he observed? That most of the incident alpha particles are going undeflected. Only very few, 1 in 8,000 are getting deflected by larger amount. What does it mean? If I bombard alpha particles towards an atom, only few are getting deflected and most of them are going undeflected. It means that they are not getting repelled. That means atom is not uniformly distributed positively charged sphere. It also means Rutherford also concluded that the entire positive charge and almost entire mass of atom is concentrated at the core of atom, known as nucleus. So Rutherford's experiment proves that Thomson's model is not true. the atom is not uniformly distributed positively charged sphere. So, from Rutherford's experiment, Thomson's model is found to be wrong. So, this model is also discarded. Now, Rutherford has given his own atomic model. What was that? In Rutherford's atomic model, Rutherford assumed that the entire positive charge of atom is concentrated at the core called nucleus, and the negatively charged electron are revolving around this positive charge. They are in dynamic equilibrium. The necessary centripetal force, if it is moving in an orbit of radius r with speed v if m is mass, so necessary centripetal force mv square by r is provided by the Coulomb attraction between nucleus and electron, that is minus z k e square by r square. So, Rutherford said that the electron is in dynamic equilibrium around nucleus, it is moving in circular orbit, and the necessary centripetal force is provided by Coulomb attraction between nucleus and electron. But Rutherford knew that this model is not true, this concept is not true, as according to Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism, if any charged particle is accelerating, it should radiate energy. And as Rutherford's electron is under centripetal acceleration, it should radiate energy, and as the orbiting electron is radiating energy, it should lose its trajectory and it will follow a spiral path towards nucleus. And that's the end of the atomic model. So Rutherford model could not explain the stability of atom. So this model also failed. Then came a path-breaking idea, a new branch of physics is opened up, that is quantum physics is opened up, and the idea was given by Niels Bohr. So now came Bohr's atomic model. What Bohr said? Bohr could not explain those things, but he has assumed something from experimental outcome of hydrogen spectrum. He assumed, he has given some hypothesis. So there are three postulates given by Bohr. The first one is, Bohr assumed that there are certain permitted orbits in which electrons revolve but they do not radiate energy. So there are certain permitted orbits where electron can revolve without emitting radiation. These orbits are known as Bohr orbits or stationary orbits or Maxwell's permitted orbits. So if electrons are not emitting energy, their path is no more spiral, they move in circular orbits, the necessary centripetal force is still the Coulomb attraction between electron and nucleus. So this was the first postulate as given by Bohr. Now when radiation is there, radiation could be there when electron jumps from one orbit to another. So in second postulate, Bohr said that there are several such orbits in which electrons can revolve. When electron absorbs energy, it jumps from lower to higher orbit. If electron jumps from higher to lower orbit, it radiates energy. So now there are both the possibilities, absorption as well as emission. When energy is absorbed, electron jumps from lower to higher orbit. When energy is radiated, electron jumps from higher to lower orbit. So emission and absorption both could be explained by the second postulate. If we write energies of the orbits, we have the energy levels. Suppose in first orbit energy level is E1, in second orbit energy is E2. So if I write energy levels as E1 and E2, When electron jumps from higher to lower orbit, it emits photon. The energy of emitted photon h nu is equal to the difference in energies E2 minus E1. So, energy of emitted photon h nu is equal to E2 minus E1. This is from the second postulate. The reverse is also true. If electron in lower orbit absorbs a photon of energy h nu is equal to E2 minus E1, then electron jumps from lower to higher orbit. So, absorption and emission both are applicable now. This was the second postulate. Now, the third postulate, which Bohr got by reverse calculation, that calculation will be getting. Bohr said that electron can revolve in only those orbits where its angular momentum is integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. Angular momentum L is proportional to h upon 2 pi, or we can write L is equal to nh upon 2 pi, where n is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. This was the revolutionary idea given by Bohr, that electron can revolve in only those orbits where its angular momentum is integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. This n is later known as principal quantum number, which is the number of orbit. And L is nothing but angular momentum is mvr, particle of mass m revolving in a circle of radius r with speed v, then its angular momentum is mvr, and this is nh upon 2 pi. So, from third postulate we have mvr is equal to nh upon 2 pi. And from this third postulate, from conservation of this angular momentum mvr is equal to nh upon 2 pi, all other quantities have got quantized. Before this, we had also the quantization rule known that charge on a particle is integral multiple of charge on electron. This quantization rule was there, but this was limited to charge only. But after Bohr postulate, all other physical quantities such as orbital radius, speed, energy, everything got quantized. So this was a new concept, and this third postulate is also known as Bohr's quantization rule. So these are the three main parts of Bohr postulates. One, necessary centripetal force in Bohr orbit is provided by Coulomb attraction. The energy of emitted or absorbed photon is equal to the difference in energy levels, and angular momentum is integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. So these are the three basic relations of Bohr model. Now, using this Bohr postulates, we will be getting different physical quantities related to Bohr atom. First we get orbital radius. Orbital radius. What are the radius of the permitted orbits that we need to know? Now we use equation 1 and 3. From equation 3, I write the value of V in equation 1. From equation 3, we have V is equal to how much? V is equal to nh upon 2 pi mr. This we get from equation 3. Let me put it in equation 1. M by r, V square is n square s square by 4 pi square m square r square is equal to, let me put the value of k also, z e square by 4 pi epsilon naught r square. Let me cancel out the quantities which are common. M is cancelled, r square is cancelled, 4 pi square and 4 pi is cancelled. So here from we can write orbital radius r is equal to epsilon naught n square h square by pi mz e square. This is the expression for orbital radius according to Bohr model. And here we can see this r is proportional to n square and inversely proportional to z. The other quantities such as epsilon naught, h, pi, m, e, these quantities are constant, and we write the expression as a naught n square by z, where the value of a naught comes out to be, first let me write the expression, it is epsilon naught h square by pi m e square, and it comes out to be 0.529 angstrom. That is the value of a naught. So this is the expression for orbital radius. Try to remember the first expression, it is more useful, and then the next one. So if I consider orbital radius, permitted radius for hydrogen atom, for hydrogen atom z is equal to 1 and we have RH is equal to a naught, 4 a naught, 9 a naught, 16 a naught, etc. So these are the permitted radius. So in hydrogen atom, electron cannot revolve in an orbit of radius 2 a naught or 3 a naught. It can revolve in a naught, then 4 a naught, then 9 a naught, 16 a naught, etc. These are the permitted radius, that is orbital radius also got quantized. Now, using the value of r in the expression of V, what we can write? V is equal to nh upon 2 pi m into 1 by r, that is epsilon naught n square a square by pi mz e square. So here from nh n square h square, pi m is cancelled. What is left? V is equal to z e square by twice epsilon naught nh. So I can write for V V can now be written as e square by twice epsilon naught h into z by n. That is, V is proportional to z by n. This e square by twice epsilon naught h, its value is equal to c by 137 to z by n, where c is speed of light. The value of c by 137 is 2.2 into 10 to the power 6 meter per second. So what are the permitted radius in which electron can revolve? For hydrogen atom, we can have, for hydrogen z is equal to 1, we have the values c by 137, c by 2 into 137, c by 3 into 137. These are the permitted speed of electron in the orbits. So electron cannot move with speed different than this. So speed is also quantized. As speed is quantized, so is the kinetic energy and potential energy. Let us see kinetic energy of electron. Kinetic energy K is half mv square, that is half m v square, that is z square e to the power 4 upon 4 epsilon naught square n square h square, or the expression for kinetic energy becomes mz square e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square n square h square. So kinetic energy is proportional to Z square by N square. Kinetic energy is also conserved. Electron cannot have all possible kinetic energies. It can only have permitted kinetic energy. If I put the values of the constants, so I can write it to be equal to 13.6 electron volt into Z square by N square. These are the permitted kinetic energies of electron in Bohr orbits. This is the expression for kinetic energy. We can also have now potential energy. Potential energy between electron and nucleus, U is equal to K Q1 Q2 by R, that is minus Z E square by 4 pi epsilon naught into 1 by R, that can be written as epsilon naught N square H square by pi mz E square. This pi is now cancelled and we have the expression for potential energy to be equal to minus mz square e to the power 4 upon 4 epsilon naught square N square H square. This is the expression for potential energy, and as you can see, for kinetic energy it is mz square e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square N square H square. It is minus mz square e to the power 4 upon 4 epsilon naught square N square H square. So this can be written as minus of 2k. So potential energy is minus 2k. If I write in terms of value, then I can write U is equal to minus 27.2 electron volt into Z square by N square. These are the permitted potential energies of the system, of the atomic system. Now what about the total energy? Total energy, as you know, it is sum of potential energy plus kinetic energy. If I write it to be minus 2k plus k, that is equal to minus k, or E is equal to minus mz square e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square N square H square. This is the expression for total energy. In terms of value, I can write it to be equal to minus 13.6 electron volt into Z square by N square. So total energy is also quantized. Now total energy is negative. What does it mean? Negative total energy means that the system is bound. System is bound means electron cannot escape out of atom. It has to revolve around the nucleus to make a system. A system can be formed only when total energy is negative. If energy becomes 0 or positive, the system breaks up. The electron will be separated from the atom itself. So total energy negative means the system is bound. If I write the values of energy for different orbits of electron, that gives energy levels. So now we need to get the energy levels. Now we have energy levels. I put different values of n and draw the energy levels. N is equal to 1 is minus 13.6 Z square electron volt. This is the minimum energy, the lowest energy level. This lowest energy level is called ground state, where n is equal to 1 and energy is minimum. For n is equal to 2, it is minus 13.6 Z square electron volt by 4. So it comes out to be minus 3.4 Z square electron volt. Above ground state, the energy level is higher. It has more energy than the ground state. This energy level is called first excited state. This is first excited state. Then if I put n equal to 3, so it is 13.6 by 9, so it is minus 1.5 Z square electron volt. This is called second excited state. Similarly, we have n equal to 4, that is minus 0.85 Z square electron volt. N is equal to 5 minus 0.57 Z square electron volt. In this way, if we proceed, we get n equal to infinity, and it gives total energy to be 0. So we have different energy levels. The energy level when the total energy is 0 means the atom is no more bound, electron is not bound in the atom, electron becomes free from the atom and atom becomes ionized. So this n equal to infinity state is called ionized state. So n equal to infinity is ionized state. So these are the different energy levels, and accordingly their names are given. N equal to 1 is ground state, n equal to 2 is first excited state. Be very careful. N equal to 2 is first excited state, n equal to 3 is second excited state, n equal to 4 is third excited state, and so on. N equal to infinity is not infinity minus 1 excited state. N is equal to infinity is ionized state. So these are the different energy levels. Now if we need to transfer electron from one orbit to another, that is from one energy to another energy level, the required energies needs to be given. These energy levels where total energy is negative, these energy levels are called bound states. That is, electron is bound with atom, it is not free to move out of the atom. Above n equal to infinity, that is for positive energies, all energy levels above n equal to infinity, all the energy levels above n equal to infinity, here electron is free from atom, and these states are called free states. Now electron is no more bound with atom, it is free to move anywhere. So these are the different energy levels. Now according to quantization rule, electron can absorb only those energies with which it can jump from one energy level to another. That is, electron can jump from 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to infinity and so on. It cannot jump in intermediate points. Why it cannot jump? Because those are not the permitted orbits, and if orbits are not permitted, it will fall in the nucleus, it follows the spiral path. So electron has to jump from one orbit to another, and to jump from one orbit to another, it requires sufficient amount of energy. That energy is called excitation energy. Excitation energy. What is excitation energy? The amount of energy needed by an electron to jump from one orbit to another is called excitation energy. Suppose for example, if electron needs to jump from 1 to 2, that is from ground state to first excited state, it requires a certain amount of energy to jump from 1 to 2. This energy is called first excitation energy. So how much is first excitation energy? First excitation energy is delta E, that is the difference in energies of these two. What is the difference? That is equal to 10.2 Z square electron volt. This is the first excitation energy. Similarly, if electron needs to jump from 1 to 3, the energy needed is called second excitation energy. So how much is second excitation energy? This is the difference of 13.6 and 1.5, that is 12.1 Z square electron volt. This is second excitation energy. In this way, we have third excitation energy, fourth excitation energy, and so on. The amount of energy needed to go from ground state to ionized state, that is called, the energy needed to transfer from ground state to ionized state is called ionization energy. And how much is it? Ionization energy, IE, is equal to 13.6 Z square electron volt. So these are the energies needed for transfer of electron from one energy level to another. Now instead of energy, we can sometimes use potential. As we know, energy is related to charge into potential. So we now define ionization potential. Ionization potential is the energy divided by charge of electron, that is 13.6 Z square volt. Similarly, we have first excitation potential, that is 10.2 Z square volt. Second excitation potential, 12.1 Z square volt, and so on. These are the excitation energies and excitation potential. So how we can write the excitation energy in generalized form? Delta E, E2 minus E1, that is equal to minus mz square e to the power 4 upon epsilon naught n2 square h square plus mz square e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square n1 square h square, or we can write mz square e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square h square into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, or m e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square h square into z square into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. This is the difference in two energy levels, which depends upon the principal quantum number of the energy levels. So these are the difference in energies. Now, from the Bohr's second postulate, we can also find the frequency and wavelength of photons needed for the transitions from one energy level to another. Let us see. As from second postulate, we have already seen delta E is equal to h nu, and this is equal to hc by lambda. So here from we can write 1 upon lambda is equal to m e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square ch cube into z square into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. This particular quantity, this constant, is known as Rydberg constant. So 1 by lambda is equal to rz square into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. This is the expression for wavelength of photon needed for transfer of electron from one energy level to another. The value of Rydberg constant can be obtained by putting the values of constants. Here R is equal to m e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square Ch cube, and that is equal to 1 upon 912 angstrom. This is Rydberg constant, and if we put the value, the expression of wavelength can be written as 1 by lambda is equal to z square by 912 angstrom into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. This is the expression for wavelength of photon, which will either be emitted or absorbed during electronic transition from one Bohr orbit to another. Now here remember one more thing, that is, whenever atom absorbs energy, that is electron jumps from lower to higher orbit, it cannot remain in higher energy levels forever. The duration for which electron can remain in excited state is of the order of 10 to the power minus 8 seconds. In ground state, electron can remain forever if left undisturbed. In ground state, electron can remain forever, but not in excited state. If it jumps to excited state, it will return back to ground state. In excited state, it can remain for a time of the order of 10 to the power minus 8 seconds. After that, it will return back to ground state. And when electron returns back to ground state, it radiates energy. That is, there is emission of photons will take place during de-excitation of atom. Now we need to know the atomic excitation and de-excitation. But before that, we need to understand about spectrum. Spectrum. What is spectrum? It is systematic arrangement of light according to its frequency or wavelength or color after dispersion from prism. What does it mean? Suppose we have a prism, we have a light, mixture of different colors, then there is dispersion of light from the prism, and on the screen we have lines of different colors depending upon the colors present in the original light, and they will get arranged here and we obtain spectrum. It is a systematic arrangement of light into different colors as rainbow is formed, or we can see VIBGYOR is formed. When the light is white, if light is not white, whatever colors are present here, only bright lines of those colors will be obtained. Now spectrum is categorized into two types. It is emission spectrum and absorption spectrum. When emission spectrum can take place? When light is coming from de-exciting atoms, the spectrum obtained from those de-exciting atoms gives emission spectrum. So emission spectrum takes place during de-excitation. Emission spectrum is obtained during de-excitation. Emission spectrum is categorized into three types. It is line spectrum, band spectrum and continuous spectrum. continuous spectrum. Line spectrum is obtained when the source, the light emitting source, is in atomic state. When source is in atomic state, it emits light of distinct colors or distinct wavelengths, so only bright lines of those distinct colors will be obtained. So in atomic state we get line spectrum. If the source is in molecular state, in molecular state the energy levels are not discrete, there are group of energy levels, so group of photons of close wavelengths are obtained and that gives a band on the screen. So from molecular state we get band spectrum. If the source is in bulk state such as solid, liquid or plasma state, then when source is in bulk state, then all possible photons are emitted during de-excitation and it gives continuous spectrum. So emission spectrums are categorized into three types: line, band and continuous. Now we need to know when we get absorption spectrum. Absorption spectrum is obtained by an absorbing medium. Suppose we have a source of light which is emitting white light and there we have an absorbing medium. The medium absorbs certain wavelengths by which it can get excited. So if it absorbs certain wavelengths, those wavelengths will be missing in the direction of incident beam, or rather we can say those wavelengths will be in lesser number in that direction. If those wavelengths are not present which are absorbed by absorbing medium, we obtain dark lines on the spectrum. This dark lines on the screen gives absorption spectrum. By observing dark lines, we can identify the element present in the absorbing medium. This is how we obtain Fraunhofer lines in solar spectrum. It gives us what elements are present in solar atmosphere. So when some lines are missing, dark lines will be obtained on the screen. Those dark lines are called, gives absorption spectrum. Absorption spectrum is also categorized into two types: line spectrum and band spectrum. So when absorption takes place means excitation takes place. Absorption spectrum is obtained during excitation of the medium through which white light is coming. Line spectrum is obtained by the absorbing medium when it is in atomic state. Band spectrum is obtained when absorbing medium is in molecular state. That is same. There is no continuous absorption spectrum because if all lights are absorbed by the absorbing medium, if all wavelengths are obtained, there will be no light of which we can obtain the dispersion from prism. So we don't talk about continuous absorption spectrum as there is no light to analyze the spectrum. So these are the emission and absorption spectrum. Now we obtain the hydrogen spectrum, from which Bohr has deduced all these things. Bohr has done the reverse calculation. So now we have hydrogen spectrum. And we are talking right now about the emission spectrum only. So now we have hydrogen spectrum. For hydrogen spectrum, we draw the energy levels for different principal quantum number or for different orbits. N is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and infinity. Minus 13.6 electron volt, minus 3.4 4 electron volt minus 1.5 electron volt minus 0.85 electron volt minus 0.57 electron volt minus 0.37 electron volt and 0. Now different transitions could take place. If somehow we have excited the hydrogen atoms and now the atom is getting de-excited, emitting various types of photons, the transition could be from 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, so on, and infinity to 1. There could be transition from 3 to 2, 4 to 2, infinity to 2, and so on. Similarly, there could be transition from other higher orbits. Whenever electron jumps from some higher orbit to directly to ground state, the photons obtained has a certain group of wavelengths, certain types of wavelength. That particular group of wavelengths is discovered by Lyman, so it is known as Lyman series. So when transition is from 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. to 1, then we have Lyman series, and the wavelength for Lyman series 1 by lambda is equal to 1 upon 912 angstrom into 1 by 1 square minus 1 by n square, where n is equal to 2, 3, 4, etc. So these are the wavelengths for Lyman series. If the transition is from any higher excited state to first excited state, then we have Balmer series. So here we have wavelength 1 by lambda is equal to 1 upon 912 angstrom, 1 by 4 minus 1 by n square, where n is equal to 3, 4, 5, etc. The transition from 3 to 2, if I find out the wavelength, the color of this line comes out to be red. This line is called H alpha line. So the first line of Balmer series, 3 to 2, is called H alpha. Its color is red, and corresponding its wavelength. What will be the wavelength of H alpha? Let me find from here. 1 upon lambda H alpha is 1 upon 912 angstrom, 1 by 4 minus 1 by 9, or lambda H alpha is equal to 912 angstrom into 36 by 5. So it comes out to be 6566 angstrom. And this color of this corresponding wavelength is red. So color of H alpha is red and its wavelength is 6566 angstrom. Similarly, if I find the second line, that is transition from 4 to 1, this color is blue and it is known as H beta line, and if we find out the wavelength corresponding to H beta line, we can put it here. 1 upon lambda H beta is equal to 1 upon 912 angstrom, 1 by 4 minus 1 by 16, or lambda H beta comes out to be 4864 angstrom and its color is blue. So in this way we can find wavelength for different transitions, and which was obtained experimentally. The wavelength were obtained experimentally, and Bohr found this particular formula by reverse calculation to match the wavelength according to the formula. You could see we have reached to the experimental value from theoretical derivation, but Bohr has done just the reverse to match the values, and that is why Bohr could not explain the quantization rule, why it happens. Later we'll be explaining how this can be obtained, which was not given by Bohr. Next, if transition is from any higher to n equal to 3, we have Paschen series. Then from any higher to 4, we have bracket series. From any higher to n equal to 5 gives Pfund series, not P Pfund, it is Pfund series. To n equal to 6, we have Humphrey series, and so on. So these are the different series of hydrogen. The time duration at which electron can remain in higher orbit is of the order of 10 to the power minus 8 second. As you could see the wavelength, if transition from 4 to 2 to 1, if I find transition from 2 to 1, the wavelength of this line, put the value n equal to 2 here, so 1 minus 1 by 4, it comes out to be 1216 angstrom. This is the wavelength corresponding to first line of Balmer series. If I try to get the last line, if I put n equal to infinity, it comes out to be 912 angstrom. As you could see, these wavelengths are below the visible region, and that is why Lyman series lies in UV region, ultraviolet region. So Lyman series lies in ultraviolet region, Balmer series lies in visible region. As you could see, these are red and blue colors, this is in visible region. Paschen series lies in infrared region, bracket, Pfund, Humphrey, these series lie in far infrared region. So these are the various regions. In every series, the last line, that is the line with maximum energy or minimum wavelength, is called series limit. So what is series limit? Minimum wavelength or maximum energy of every series is series limit. So for Lyman series, the series limit is 912 angstrom. Similarly, we have series limit for Balmer series from infinity to 2, that is 1 upon 912 angstrom into 1 by 4, that is, if I put the values, the series limit of Balmer series is 3648 angstrom. So these are, in this way we can have series limit of other series also. So that is hydrogen spectrum, and the values which we got theoretically almost within experimental error limit matches with the experimentally found values. So this is the hydrogen spectrum which was explained by Bohr. Now in every spectrum, in emission and absorption spectrum, there are certain number of lines which can be obtained. So number of lines in spectrum, if suppose we have only 2 energy levels available where excitation and de-excitation can take place, there is only one way of excitation, there is only one way of de-excitation, or if only 2 energy levels are there. So in absorption spectrum there will be one line, in emission spectrum there will also be one line. If 3 energy levels are there, then 1 to 2 and 1 to 3, 2 types of excitation is possible, whereas 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 3 to 2, 3 types of de-excitation is possible. If we have 4 energy levels, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 3 types of excitation are possible. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 2 and 4 to 3. 6 types of de-excitation are possible. So you could see that number of de-excitation is more than the number of excitation, as under normal circumstances excitation from already excited state is not possible. That means in ordinary situation electron cannot jump from 2 to 3. In ordinary situation it cannot jump from 2 to 4, it cannot jump from 3 to 4. So excitation is possible only from ground state under normal circumstances, whereas de-excitation is possible from any higher to any lower energy level. So number of lines in emission spectrum. Number of lines in emission spectrum is n into n minus 1 by 2. If 2 energy levels are there, 2 into 2 minus 1 by 2, that is 2. If 3 energy levels are there, 3 into 2 by 2, that is 3. If 4 energy levels are there, 4 into 3 by 2, that is 6, and so on. Whereas number of lines in absorption spectrum is n minus 1. For 2 energy levels, 1 type of absorption spectrum. For 3 energy level, 3 minus 1, that is 2. For 4 energy levels, it is 4 minus 1, 3, and so on. So be careful. In emission spectrum, number of lines is n into n minus 1 by 2. In absorption spectrum, the number of lines is n minus 1. So this is about hydrogen spectrum and Bohr model. Now let us see some questions. Now the question is, hydrogen atoms in ground state absorb photons of energy 12.75 electron volt. Find the number of lines present in emission spectrum of such atoms. So the question is, hydrogen atoms absorb photons of energy 12.75 electron volt, and you need to find the number of lines in emission spectrum of such atoms. So at 12.75 electron volt of energy, in which energy level hydrogen atom goes? Let us write the expression. Delta E is equal to 13.6 electron volt into 1 minus 1 by n square. This delta E is 12.75 is equal to 13.6, 1 minus 1 by n square, or here from I can write 1 by n square is equal to 13.6 minus 12.75 by 13.6, or n is equal to under root 13.6 by 13.6 minus 12.75. So it is equal to 13.6 upon 13.6 minus 12.75, that is equal to how much? 0.85, which is approximately equal to under root 16, or that is equal, n is equal to 4. So electron jumps from 1 to 4, absorbing energy of 12.75 electron volt, If it jumps to 4, then in how many possible ways it can de-excite? 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 2 and 4 to 3, that is n into n minus 1 by 2, that is 4 into 3 by 2, that is 6. So the answer is 6. 6 energy levels or 6 lines will be obtained in the spectrum of such atoms. Okay. So by energy we can find in which excited state it could go. With the excited state, the principal quantum number, be very careful, the number may not be exact, but you need to take the integer value of n only, the closest possible integer of n. Otherwise those photons will not be absorbed at all. So 6 lines will be present in the emission spectrum of such atom. Now there are various other questions which could be directly obtained from the equations which I have just given. So I am not going to those problems which can be directly obtained from the formula itself. Rather, I need to know something else where the type of questions are more commonly asked, and those are like this. Let us see. So far we have assumed that the atom to nucleus of the atom to be stationary. We have not considered the atom to be moving. We have considered electron is revolving around the nucleus. Nucleus is exerting force on orbiting electron. The reverse is also true. Electron is applying force on the nucleus. So nucleus cannot remain stationary. Nucleus will also be moving. And now we need to consider the moving nucleus. So nucleus cannot be stationary, nucleus will also be moving. In absence of any external force, center of mass of the system will remain at rest. Center of mass will not be moving, but nucleus as well as electron both will be moving around that center of mass. Nucleus in smaller orbit and electron in larger orbit. Suppose this is nucleus, this is electron, this is nucleus, let mass is capital M, this is electron, mass is small m. The orbital radius of nucleus is capital R, orbital radius of electron is suppose small r. They are revolving around the center of mass. If we use the concept of center of mass, the two body moving system can be replaced by a single body moving system, as you might have seen in the chapter center of mass. The two body moving system can be considered to be a single body moving system using the concept of a reduced mass. A particle of reduced mass is moving in an orbit of radius r plus r around a fixed center. So a two body moving system can be assumed to be a single body moving system having mass equal to mu, where the mass mu is equal to capital M small m by capital M plus small m. This is a reduced mass of the system. So wherever in previous expression we have used the mass of electron, instead of that mass of electron, now we will be using reduced mass. Previously we have seen the expression for orbital radius to be equal to epsilon naught n square h square by pi m z e square. There m was the mass of revolving electron. Now instead of mass of revolving electron we have reduced mass. So if I consider non-stationary nucleus, I replace small m with a reduced mass, and if I compare it with our previous model, then Rn can be written as me by mu into Rs, where S is for stationary nucleus. Rs we already know. Rs is equal to A naught n square by Z as we obtained earlier. So when we consider nucleus to be moving, we use reduced mass of system instead of mass of electron. And the formula gets modified accordingly. It is the ratio of mass of electron to reduced mass. In the similar manner, other formulas wherever the masses are there, that can be replaced, as in case of suppose total energy, we talk of total energy is equal to mz square e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square n square h square with a minus sign. If we consider non-stationary model, then this m will be replaced by mu, and the expression can be written as mu by me into Es, where Es is equal to minus 13.6 electron volt into Z square by n square. So the expressions are not new. Only thing is that mass of electron has to be replaced by the reduced mass in all previous formulas. Now how to use this particular expression when nucleus is moving? Let us see it through a question. Suppose we have a muonic atom. And the question is, find the first Bohr radius of muonic atom. First Bohr radius of muonic atom, R1, you have to find. Now what is muonic atom? Muonic atom is made up of an electron and a positron. Electron and positron. Now we don't have proton, but we have positron. Electron and positron has same mass, but the charge of positron is same as that of proton. So we have two particles, one electron and positron is anti-electron. Both have same mass, so their center of mass is at the middle. So reduced mass of the muonic atom, mu is equal to Me into Me by Me plus Me, or that is equal to Me by 2, and we have Rn is equal to Me by mu is Me by 2 into Rs, that is equal to 2Rs, that is 2A naught n square by Z. Z is 1 here. For first Bohr orbit n is 1, so it is 2A naught, or 2 into 0.529 can be written approximately as 53. So 2 into 0.53 angstrom or 1.06 angstrom is the radius of first Bohr orbit of muonic atom. So this is how you need to use a reduced mass. In IIT, one question was there where mass of orbiting electron is doubled, and it is asked what will be the wavelength of first line of Balmer series for such an atom. So if we think of the wavelength, then as we have seen, 1 upon lambda is equal to Rz square 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, and for R we have seen R is equal to m e to the power 4 upon 8 epsilon naught square Ch cube. If I think of non-stationary, then this Rn will be equal to mu e to the power 4 into 8 epsilon naught square Ch cube. So here from we can again write 1 by lambda n is equal to mu by me into 1 by lambda s or lambda n is equal to me by mu into lambda s. This is for non-stationary nucleus, the wavelength of emitted photon. Now as we know, 1 by lambda s is equal to r into 1 square. For first line of Balmer series, it is 1 by 4 minus 1 by 9, or lambda s is equal to 36 by 5r. This is lambda s. And as I said that mass of orbiting particle is twice the mass of electron. So this formula can be modified. So here from I can write me by 2me into 36 by 5r. So for that hypothetical atom where mass of orbiting particle is twice the mass of electron, we have lambda n is equal to 18 by 5r. So this is how the Bohr model could be used. In the next class, we will be getting further modification in Bohr model and the explanation given by de Broglie to explain Bohr hypothesis. So that we will be getting in the next class.